the truth is the number one stopper. They say you think, but you never want to speak up. They say you're hiding there, you're busy, but what's on your mind, kid? What's on your mind, kid? They say out loud, they will never.
Hello and welcome to episode number 60 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark, and with me as always are my co-hosts Kellen and Neelan. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, he's level 3.
Yeah.
So on today's episode, we are going to be discussing table talk, whether we like doing a little smack talk or chit-chatting at the table, when maybe we shouldn't be doing that, when it adds flavor to the game, when it detracts. Before we do that, we are going to be talking about the games we've played this week. But before we even do that,
Double.
a
Oh my
little
God.
surprise cherry on
Inception.
top. I thought we'd maybe give a little back to the listeners and put them at the head of the table here. So this review, let me just pick one at random. This is from Quentin Quins Smith. So
Is that a name?
I sort of feel bad for reading the full name, but it was so weird that I felt compelled to. So this says, finally, we've got a board gaming podcast that you might want to add to your rotation.
Might?
Might is, so maybe I picked the wrong
Qualified,
In the first sentence.
random.
Yeah.
I might switch this to a different review. Anyway, Board Game Barrage has joined So Very Wrong About Games as a tabletop podcast where I'll cheerily listen to every episode.
It just seems like we've got a might and a different board game
Yeah.
podcast.
Podcast in
the
the
same
same
Two
sentence.
sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
this
a very
is rough.
diluted review. These guys are concise, entertaining, and like SU and SD. Is that?
SUSD. SUS.
That's
Oh, I
like
think that's-
BDSM, right?
I think that might be, I think that actually might be Shut Up and Sit Down.
Oh,
SU
the website.
Yeah, the website.
Oh, okay,
yeah. They do board game stuff too.
Okay.
Like us, sort of.
I think, yeah, vaguely familiar.
Yeah. So these guys are concise, entertaining, and like Shut Up and Sit Down, enjoy everything from heavy games to the most dumbest party games. So the most dumbest party games is probably your neck of the woods, Kellen. I go sort of
they-
heavier, and you're the most dumbest, and Neelan is somewhere in the middle.
Is it English not their first language?
Most
Maybe?
dumbest is,
Most
that's,
dumbest?
again, I feel bad for this is the wrong one to have picked. But anyway, let's just finish it up. We're halfway through. Their team is also predominantly people of color, which is a welcome change in the creamy white, another shot at Kellen, board game industry. Also, kudos to them for putting me onto hundreds of horses. So there's a plus for Kellen. I expect I'll be keeping an eye out for that one in discount board game shops from now until the day I die. So, kidding aside, as some of you may know, that was a review or a mention of us on the Shut Up and Sit Down website, their Monday newsletter, and that was from Quins of Shut Up and Sit Down. We can't thank the guys over there enough.
Yeah,
it's
it
been
awesome.
great, to be part of their fantastic community as we try to build up our own little community here.
And Quins, no need to browse the bargain bins for hundreds of horses. Go ahead and just DM us your address, and we'll ship that right over
That's
to,
right, you got
to
it.
your house.
But yeah, to be in the same breath as illustrious sites like Shut Up and Sit Down and So Very Wrong About Games is fantastic. And so any of you guys joining us from the Shut Up and Sit Down community, welcome, and we hope you like what you hear. Feel free to get a hold of us if you'd like. We have a Discord channel that has been pretty lively and fun and positive. That is at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. And you can also reach us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. We're on any kind of social media, so search us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're all on all those avenues of social media. So, yeah, please get in touch. And, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the show and talk about games we've played. Neelan, what have you been playing?
So I have played Everdell. This is a game from last year. I remember it being very hot around the time we went to Gen Con last year. A lot of people sort of lining up to get a copy of this. So we had the collector's edition of this, and this is a card collection tableau building game. It's got this sort of fantasy theme.
This is the game with the big tree, right?
Yeah,
Three-dimensional tree.
Yeah, if you've ever seen like this on a table, it's like this giant tree that's on top of the board. The theme is sort of humanoid animals, sort of in a fantasy forest, and you're collecting these cards, which are either critters or constructions, and you're collecting resources, worker placement style. So you start the game with 2 little workers, which are either adorable hedgehogs or turtles or squirrels. You place them on the board to get some resources, you play a card, and then you sort of advance through these seasons, getting more workers as you go, building up these card combinations and playing out 4 different seasons. I played this at 2 players a couple of times, and then Kellen and I played this pretty recently as a 4-player game. And one thing I want to say off the bat is like the first couple of times I played this didn't give me the strongest impression of it, and I had a much better impression of it having played it recently again at 4 players, and admittedly under rules that I had not played correctly the first couple of times.
So do you think that the better play, this last play being the best play, was a result mainly of the 4-player or mainly of
It was
this
the
rule that you got
company
right?
that he was playing.
Well,
with.
certainly not that.
Totally. I think there was each of those was a significant notch in its thing. And the main reason for that is one of the things this game does is if you have like a construction that you've played to your city, it gives you free access to a corresponding critter. So say I might play a post office, and then that allows me to play the postal pigeon for free, right? But that means you have to have the postal pigeon in your hand. So the only way to get that is there's this meadow of 8 cards, which rotates as people play from it, or you're just sifting through the deck to find them, right? Yeah. So in a 2-player game, those cards are changing out less frequently.
I see.
And also, in the first game I played this, we weren't using the meadow correctly at all. So it was just like this double barrier of not getting the cards you need. And it felt like everything. And this is, I think, probably my biggest criticism of the game, in that it relies heavily on these very, very quite specific card combos.
Even played correctly, even with 4 players.
Played correctly, even with 4 players. Much less so, obviously.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, with any combo game, like we're probably going to end up comparing this to Wingspan shortly, but that has cards that pair well with each other, but they're seeded throughout the deck fairly frequently. Like there's only a few archetypes of cards in Wingspan, whereas you might literally be looking for the 1 or 2 cards in this deck that have a very specific name. And that's for multiple reasons. A, because you're getting that card for free if you have the corresponding construction. There are events that are one of the ways to score in the game, which if you have these 2 specific cards, like say the Doctor and the Monastery, you're eligible to score this event card. And there's only 4 of those. There's not that many combinations of them. So you're hyper-specifically looking for those cards to come out. And then there are also cards which just work better or work at all when they're paired with other cards. Like you might have a husband and wife farming pair, and you want to pair those 2 together because they're worth more points. So there are just these very hyper-specific cards that you're looking for at any given point in the game. And why I find that especially frustrating is because effectively this is an engine building game. Like you're collecting resources, you're using them to get cards, which you're going to combo to get more and more resources to do this more and more and more. And if you're getting those combos early on in the game, you're getting a jump start in your engine, right? Like that just feels something that felt especially devastating to me, even once I was playing it correctly. Kellen, what do you think of this?
This is a hard one to wrap my head around and either recommend or not recommend. I think it's way, way, way overproduced.
That's good, yeah.
This collector's edition is $100-ish, I think. There's a giant 3D tree.
I've heard that the tree is like an obstruction. Did you find that to be the case?
It's actually a burden to the game.
It's kind of hard to get to the deck of cards underneath it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's like 3 different things, right? Because, like the cards are nestled in the tree, which makes them hard to get to. The event cards, which are victory point things, are like elevated. So if you're seated at the table, you can't see them without standing up.
Right.
And then if you imagine 4 people around the table, one person might have their view like entirely obstructed by the tree. So it's a pretty bizarre thing that actually doesn't really serve any like functional purpose except, aesthetically.
As an engine builder, the game is a little bit looser than I would like it. The card deck that you're using doesn't progress through seasons or ages, so it's one big deck of cards. So you could get that endgame scoring card in your first hand and then have to sort of pivot around that, which is good and bad, has good and bad qualities to it. It's much more complicated than a game like Wingspan, I would say. The comparison between it and Wingspan, I think, is so interesting because they are very specifically beautiful themes, beautiful productions. I would say Everdell is a little gaudy, where Wingspan feels very tasteful. If you want to talk specifically about the presentation, Everdell is sort of a Redwall style, cute critters. But
that's it. The art is beautiful.
The art is amazing. Little turtle meeples look like a man trying to punch you, which I don't understand. But it's looser. But that same looseness allows for more interesting decision-making for me than Wingspan. All of the edges are rounded off in Wingspan. All the powers are variations of themselves.
Yeah.
And that makes it so it never feels fundamentally unfair. And it also, for me, makes it never feel fundamentally extremely exciting or engaging. Whereas in Everdell, a combo comes up and you get all hyped about it and you try to figure out how to make it happen, and then you make it happen. And then everyone else at the table is like grumbling. Well, I didn't even see the princess card, so I've been top decking for an hour and didn't get that card. So, but you have those moments of excitement.
Sure.
Does that make it a great game? No. Unfortunately not. To be honest, I had a very positive impression of our first game, even though there's bits of it that I find wonky. I went online and actually looked at the expansion. There's a water-themed Pearl Brook Everdell expansion. I was hoping that it would tighten that it would do something to the game I'm not sure how to describe what it would need to do, but it would need to rein it in a little bit. And in fact, it does not. It just adds more cards and adds a sideboard. So it does everything that a bad expansion would do. So I'm not interested personally in keeping Everdell based off these plays that we've had.
It's interesting you mentioned like the big moments, because I agree fully that it does have those. You have those moments where either a card you've been holding onto for a long time and then you finally get to do it. But I have a very specific pet peeve, which might be specific to me, which is that if I do a strong move that I feel bad about, it sours the game a little bit for me personally. And I ended up winning that game because I played a card which fed into another card that gave me 10 points. That's 1/6 of my winning score, which is huge. And that just felt like I lucked into that card and I had the perfect card to combo it with. And again, that's just indicative of all the stuff I've been saying. It just felt like that should have been a good moment for me where I was like, look at this, guys. I'd managed to pull this off. But everyone was just like, that doesn't seem fair.
This may be a little bit of a foreshadowing to our table talk discussion, but I do my best to make Nealon feel bad when he gets that luck so that he doesn't exploit me in the future in games. So even though it has nothing to do with you and you just lucked into it, I do want you to feel bad.
Sure. I think that's about covers it for our thoughts on Everdell. This is by Starling Games.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking for a light, medium, somewhere in between light and medium weight tableau builder, worker placement style game that you might be able to get a non-gamer or someone who's casually interested in games, Everdell would be one I would look to. I think Wingspan is probably better because it's nicer and safer, but I don't think Everdell is out of that conversation.
I don't think so either, yeah.
Just doesn't have a purpose for me in my collection.
Right. I think it's telling, though, that of those two, at least for me, that even though I feel that they are in a similar weight, Wingspan is the one I feel ultimately I would hold on to, and Everdell I don't.
Yeah.
All right. I played a game this week. This was the latest version of Concordia. So this is actually a standalone game that you can, I guess, also play with the base Concordia. This is Concordia Venus.
Neptune?
Venus.
Got it.
Pluto.
Farther, colder. If you say Mars, I would say warmer, but it is in fact
I
Venus. So, getting back to the game, Concordia Venus is the team version of Concordia. So, in Concordia Venus, you are partnered up with the player across from you. So, in the game I played, it was 6 players, and so every third turn, basically, our team would play.
So, Concordia is the most Euro of Euros by Matt Gertz.
Matt Gertz, yeah. It's a Rondell-less Matt Gertz, which is a unique beast in and of itself.
And Concordia is a game that seems like it came out with little fanfare, and then that fire has just grown over time. Concordia is many people's favorite mid-weight Euro game.
Sort of thanks to, I was
going to say,
Shut Up and Sit Down's endorsement.
That
they were the ones who sort of fueled that fire.
There was a point in time where they were heavily, comparing almost every game to is this as good as Concordia? Which,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, right after they mentioned it, it was like it became one of the hottest games to get, and it was like out of print. So the way you play Concordia and the way you play Concordia Venus are almost exactly the same. What you're doing is it's a little bit of a deck builder. You have a hand of cards. Everybody starts with basically the same cards. And in order to take an action on the board, you play a card. So you might play a card that allows you to move your character and build. You might play a card that will allow you to get resources. You might play a card that will allow you to buy a card from the array, which is the way you get more cards into your hand. And then there's a card that you can play to copy the last action that somebody else has done. So if Kellen on a previous turn has played a move card and I've already played my move card, one way I can move my characters is to play this copy action, which is called a diplomat action, and then I get to do that. Furthermore, you're buying these cards for the actions that they allow you to do, but they also have a little name at the bottom.
A little twist.
Because the way you score most of your points, if not all, I don't think there's any other way to score, is at the end of the game, you will look at the cards that you've amassed, and they will have a god written on them. So they might say Mars or Venus or Jupiter or Neptune. Here's your Neptune. And each of the gods score in a different way. So one god may score based on the number of regions you're in. One god may score based on the types of goods you produce. So if you're in a number of regions, I don't know what god it is, but say it's Jupiter, you want a lot of cards, whether they were cards that allow you to move or get resources or whatever they did, but you want cards that say Jupiter on them, because at the end of the game, every Jupiter card you have will score for the number of regions. So when you're building your deck by buying cards, you're looking both at the action that it gives you and the way that allow you to score at the end of the game. So it's a very unique, tight sort of mechanism.
So I think we get it. It's a Euro game, the Euro game. So Concordia Venus.
Wait, first, have you played Concordia?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think it's a unique Euro game in that whole card play thing, the card play, card scoring. You think it's bland in that respect?
Concordia is bland.
I will give you the trappings are bland, the aesthetics, the look of it, are bland.
But
resources, I think the resources, all that are like trading in the Mediterranean standard fare. But the card play and the scoring thing, I think, is really unique. Even though I'm not the biggest fan, I do like it. I'm not the biggest fan of Concordia, but I think that card mechanism is
I
really
do
nice.
love how smooth it is.
Yeah.
I think the scoring isn't for me because there's a lot of multiplication that you're doing
Okay,
of this
yeah.
card. And it just... I can't be bothered to sort of sort that out.
Gotcha. I understand that.
Are all of the cards fairly unique? Like,
No, they're not.
so
There are
there's
basically like 5 or 6 types of cards.
okay.
Oh, you haven't played this?
No, I've never played
Oh,
it. No.
interesting.
The way Concordia Venus works is on your turn, you play a card and you take the action, and then your partner takes that same action. Now, another thing that Concordia Venus introduces are these cards that have 2 types of actions. So a card may have a architect/merchant action. So whereas before there were architect actions and merchant actions, these split cards, when you play them, you choose one and your partner does the other. Most of the time when you play an action card, both of you will be taking the same action, but these split action cards allow you to take different actions if it benefits you. Like there are a number of circumstances in the game where you really want to move, but your partner is like already well suited where he wants to be, and you just wish that I really want to play this move card, but I'm wasting half of our action because he doesn't want to move. These split cards allow you to do 2 different actions.
So playing a Euro game 3-on-3 does not strike me as what a Euro game is designed or intended to be.
Right.
So what does that feel like? How much diplomacy and discussion is happening?
A lot between teammates, quite a bit, because there's a lot of, hey, I really want to play this merchant action. Is that something you want to do? Or you could say, what cards do you have in your hand? What are you thinking of doing next?
And the 3 of you add up your points, and that's your score?
That's correct. Yeah, the 2 of you. Each team adds up your points.
Well, you played 3v3, right?
No, you play teams of 2. It's always you and your partner.
Teams of 2. I see.
We played 3 teams of 2.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, so 3 teams of 2. So yeah, you are talking to your partner about what you can do now, setting up for them, stuff like that. But your question sort of hits at the problem I had with the game. I think I probably enjoyed the game the least of the group, even though I still enjoyed it. I had a good time. It wasn't where I walked away having a especially sour feeling. I like playing team games, but a game that is that, it's not especially heavy, and it's a very smooth game, like smoothly designed, but I feel like in a medium to heavy Euro, I want to sort of be in control of my decisions, and certainly I am because I'm talking to my partner, but there's a little bit of a loss of control that I can accept in a party game or in a quicker game that will even accentuate those types of games that felt like it detracted from a mid to heavy Euro.
It's just, how are you doing those calculations with someone else?
Yeah, exactly.
In conjunction together.
If the game is like effectively like an optimization, like you sort of have to like compromise on your optimization when it comes to factoring in another player, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. There's a lot of times where a move will be optimal for you, but in conjunction with what your partner has, or in conjunction where he is on the board, or what cards he has in his hand, it's just a lot of compromise. I mean, it's interesting, and it's a compromise that you discuss, but I couldn't help but feeling like if I was playing by myself,
I would do something much
I would do
better.
something better.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think it extends the length of the game because there's always
discussion.
Every turn you have to like take your partner's position and situation to account. Whereas like if it was just me, I could plan ahead, with some degree of change if the board state had changed or whatever. But I could say, okay, I'm going to do this, and if it comes to my turn, boom, I do it, and we move. This game felt like it dragged on. It might be a function of the fact that I think 5 out of 6 players or 4 out of 6 players were new to the game, or the fact that we had 6 players, period. Maybe it's better at 2 on 2.
Teams.
But it just felt a little longer. I think it went 2.5 hours, so it felt like a little longer than I wanted. It's incredibly well designed for sure. Plays very smoothly, but for me, I'd prefer, I think, vanilla Concordia to Concordia Venus.
Because it strikes me that it's similar in a way to Between Two Cities. You have 2 separate castles that you're trying to build up, or 2 separate cities, I guess. And you have to decide whether it's worth it to score 5 in this one or 3 in that one. Because in that game, you only score your lowest city. In this game, is it better for you to get 10 points or for your partner to get 3 points and then on a future turn be able to get 10 points?
Right.
And so that calculation could be interesting.
Yeah.
If the system was built from the ground up to support it.
Right. And I like that in Between Two Cities, but part of the reason is because it moves so fast. The game is so quick.
Yeah.
If the decisions were much more thinky and the game took a lot longer, that compromise on every turn, that would be a little
But Mark,
more difficult.
Concordia, how many players is base Concordia?
I think it goes up to 5.
Now we've got 6.
Now we've got.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did you think about that, Mark?
I did not think about adding another person into the folds. The more people gaming, the better. I should be thankful about that.
I will say that I will always admire an expansion that tries to do something significantly
Yes,
different
and
from
this
the base
certainly is
game.
doing
So
that,
that,
yes, right.
that at least is something to
Yeah, and
give credit for.
it adds again these split cards, which are interesting, which would not make sense in regular Concordia because there's no reason to have you wouldn't split actions. And it adds another scoring, which is the Venus God, which scores for situations where you and your partner are in a region. So it sort of
rewards
rewards playing in concert.
Right.
So that is Concordia Venus by Mac Gertz.
Its description on BGG: Concordia is a peaceful strategy game.
Peaceful.
Great. I'm done.
That's your. That's all. That's the one sentence Kellen needed, and he's out.
Moving on.
Yes.
To
another peaceful game.
Yep.
a fun game.
Peaceful also.
Project Elite.
Project Elite.
Isn't it kept like E.L.I.T.E?
Project Elite is a game.
Great start.
And that's all we have to say about Project Elite.
Project Elite is a game I am super glad to have tried. This is a dice chucking, real-time team co-op game versus the aliens, where there was a first edition of this game. It immediately sold out. Everybody has been trying to get it. Cool Mini or Not picked up the rights and did a huge Kickstarter late last year. I have kickstarted this game. I've gone all in, and I had never played it. So that is consumerism, boys and girls. But Mark, in his best trading sense,
yes.
Once someone else had decided to get the Cool Mini or Not version,
yep.
He was able to get all of the original Kickstarter for fractions of a penny.
$40
on the dollar.
One man's trash is my treasure.
This was selling for hundreds of dollars about 6 months ago. But Project Elite is very unique if you are not used to this type of game. Essentially, you will be in charge of your own character that is trying to defeat an oncoming horde of aliens. And you'll be rolling dice over and over again in order to use what comes up to do different powers on the board. So that's moving, if you want to move and get closer to an alien to shoot. That is shooting, if you want to use different symbols to make your gun fire. That is searching for loot. That is, one of them is actually bad, and that's one of the big things of the game, is every time you roll the alien face, they move closer to you. You have to choose an alien to move closer, and they move along these predetermined paths. So that's the symbol you don't want to get, usually. So we played a game of this tonight, and it was awesome.
Yes.
So good.
This was a scenario where we had to escort... what were we escorting?
It was a recon mission. So we had to escort these, I guess like drones to predetermined spots and then get back to base.
So the way that this plays out is over 8 rounds of 2 minutes of real-time gameplay, and then the aliens spawn and get closer and try to attack you. So there's a lot of planning and then frantic chaos as you try to make something happen. And so, immediately we got off to a great start because Neelan walked 1 square ahead and then blocked Mark and I.
the corridor, yep.
So we couldn't even get around him, and all the aliens are coming
and
closer
the clock
and
is ticking,
And
and
I was
Neelan is
rolling
like
the dice, trying to move, yep.
So that was a good start to the game. Right. But ultimately, you've got a ton of different types of weapons. One player might have a special ability that I was the medic for the game, sort of my personas.
I'm sure this will surprise all our listeners that Kellen was the healer, the support.
Healer and helping people. And I healed.
You did heal.
You did
heal.
heal.
Both of us, I think.
You all got healed.
Yes, by your healing hands.
It was a hand symbol actually on the die. That's strange. But ultimately, the different types of guns are really satisfying because some can shoot really far, but only once. And then, once you choose to engage with your gun, you then have to roll a bunch of dice, and on a certain count, it hits. So you might have a gun that only gets to roll 1 die, but it hits on 2+. Or you might get to roll 4 die, but it only hits on 5 or 6. And so that franticness of that 2 minutes really gets at you, you know. And then there are special aliens, special bosses that screw around with those rules, where one of them reduces your clock time. One of them, if you kill him, the round ends immediately.
Right.
But it has this great balance and this great mix of that frantic real time, can I do anything? Oh, shoot, I can't. And then you stop, and then you plan.
Yeah.
And you plan together, and it's, Mark, I don't know who you were, Mark, but
I was a tank.
Mark's character got in a corridor where he didn't even move.
Right.
The aliens kept moving you. But
I just said, send them this way, boys.
And so we just kept funneling the aliens through his tunnel, through his corridor.
Yeah.
And he just
Corridor of death, I like to call it.
He just kept killing them. And so it all culminated really in a spectacular finish where Mark was paralyzed. Mark was unable to move, but had to return to base in order to win. So we're all running back to the base, and we actually had to have an alien push Mark over the finish line in order to win. Yeah, which we were able to do in the 8th round, the final turn. We made it happen. This doesn't feel like, the closest analogous is probably Escape, Curse of the Hidden Temple. This feels much better to me. Perhaps it's just thematically, the theme. You get into it as these hordes of there's 40 minis on the board as these aliens are just spawning, and new aliens come out in between each round, and then bosses happen and events happen. It never feels like you get a break.
Not at all, yeah.
I was kind of hoping in the first round or two to explore and get a new gun.
Right.
But it's the one round where I did get a new gun, I was making sure you guys didn't notice that I was hunting for loot instead of helping shoot aliens. What did you guys think of this?
I mean, obviously the Escape comparison is pretty apt. It's very much the same style of game. Keep rolling your dice, do something with each of the symbols. You get locked in specific dice, or some of the dice symbols are bad. I did mention this to you that I feel like for whatever reason, despite them feeling really similar, at least on the surface, Project Elite is so much better to me than Escape. I actually don't really even like Escape all that much, but Project Elite I thought was fantastic. Part of that might just be, like you said, there's the theme, the presentation, but it also just feels like you're just doing a little bit more with your dice. If you get the gun, you're going to put it on the gun, then you might roll for the thing. So every little action you do has more substance to it, more decision space. Whereas in Escape, you're kind of just putting a die on a thing to, it just feels very small by comparison.
Yeah, I think Project Elite is, first of all, a great game, and I think it blows Escape out of the water. Yeah. I think the reason why is Escape, you have those dice that lock up when you roll them, and they are locked until somebody comes and basically rescues you. But you feel, a lot of times in Escape, you feel very limited. You feel like you're stuck. When it comes to Project Elite, there are bad faces to the dice, but those are just a very quick incidental thing. And even those bad faces, if you play it right, you can make them work for you.
Exactly.
Because, if the bad faces, again, as Kellen said, move the aliens towards you. There are times where you want the aliens to get closer. When I was paralyzed, I needed the aliens. I said, hey, guys, can you please bring the aliens over to me?
Or you're just trying to close distance for a range of your weapons.
Right.
It's okay, I can use this instead of moving.
And even when you're not in those situations, even when an alien move is unquestionably bad, you're getting the dice right back. Only time that you're locking dice is of your own choosing. There are spots on the board that you can place a dice, and that'll lock the dice for the end of the round. But that's something you're strategizing over. That's something you're doing as a choice. Furthermore, on another tangent, I only got this game really because I just thought it was such a great value for the opportunity I had. I thought I might like it, but I wasn't sure. I'd heard a lot of hype, but I just felt like it was going to be like an Ameritrash. You roll a dice, make a lot of calculations, whatever, have these weapons that just thought it would be super fiddly, especially when you see how many components are in the box. This box is just filled with plastic. But for as many components as there are, and as many things as you sort of need to track, it just plays so smooth. The vast majority of the aliens are one-shot kills, so you don't have to worry about tracking them. The bosses and the under-bosses are made of a different color plastic, so you can always identify them. The powers that they have are cool. The way that you fire weapons are straightforward. You're just rolling dice, comparing it to a single number. There's no versus this character's armor. There's not a lot there. It's very smooth. It's very intuitive. I've taught this game now to 3 different groups. 15 minutes of explaining the rules, and we're going.
Yeah, I think one of the systems that gives it real tension is that you have 3 health. And then if you die, other games don't allow you to die because they don't want player elimination. Well, Project Elite, you have 4 dice. And if you die, you can come back, but you only have 3
Right.
the rest of the game. If you die again, then you only have 2 dice.
Right.
So you can keep coming back and helping, but you're crippled.
Yes.
And that adds this crazy... Now, none of these guys died because I was, again, the healer. And I did my job wonderfully and kept them alive. But that threat, that tension, it's just a really clean system.
Yes, absolutely.
That could otherwise get convoluted or be too burdened.
Yeah, there is some bookkeeping and fiddliness, but to the game's credit, it all happens between rounds.
Right.
So there's this reset where you're cooling and thinking about things, and then a lot of cards are coming out and things are spawning. But then during the actual rounds, like you said, everything is just clean and simple. Move a figure, move a chit, that sort of thing.
And even that bookkeeping, I just feel like it's as streamlined as possible. It's not as streamlined as other games, but for a game that is doing as much as it is, with the whole real time, I just think it's done beautifully.
Yeah, it's a really dumb critique, but everything that happens in between the rounds is bad.
Right.
And it's almost like I was dreading it towards the end of the game instead of maybe there could be some fun power that you get, because no matter what, it's just, oh, that's bad.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're closer.
Right.
But yeah, if this sounds interesting to you, you can probably find a used copy of Project Elite for cheap right now.
Yeah.
Before the Cool Mini or Not version comes out. That version is coming out, I think, much later this year in 2019. I'm super excited to get it so that I can gloat and tell Mark that I have a superior copy.
I'll just wait until somebody else gets rid of theirs, and then I'll get mine. I have no FOMO. I will wait. I will wait it out. But that is Project Elite by Artipia Games, and soon to be by Simon. So now let's get into our discussion for the week, which is table talk. So let's start with just the basic question. Do you guys like table talk? Do you table talk? What is your general feeling on people talking at the table?
As a general rule, I don't really have that much problem with it. I would sort of encourage it depending on the context. I feel like the games that the 3 of us play, tend to be quite trash talk, table talk heavy.
Yeah.
And that's always fun.
Okay, but we're not, let's clarify. We wholesale encourage talking during a board game.
Right.
But I don't think everybody does. I think there are people who want silence or want their games to be very...
Totally. I think that is a very prominent thing where people are like, okay, less talking, more playing.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
Yeah.
So when you say table talk, you mean literally talking?
I think table talk sort of means trash talk, but I think it can encompass any sort of chatter at the table. Just the idea of having conversation at the table at all, or having conversation at the table relating to the game, whether or not that's something that you enjoy or like to do. I know you...
What do you know about my table talk, Mark?
I mean, you always want to talk at the table, right? Was that fair?
Yeah, I can't even fathom another reality where
I wouldn't.
Well, it's we're getting these Otama bot, so we don't even need people anymore for these board games.
Right.
It's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you in that. No matter how heavy the game is or how many calculations you need to do or how dry the game is, I always want to talk.
I think the counter side to that coin is if someone is just telling you about their dinner from 3 nights ago when they're supposed to be taking their turn.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I'd always want it to be relevant to the game you're playing.
See, I don't even agree with that,
really?
actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of side conversations.
You're not a big fan of socializing?
Yeah, exactly. Talking to people.
Speaking of that, I think one thing that's important and something that I do like having non-game related conversation, I think that's fine, but I think it's important to try to limit those conversations to things that everybody can sort of participate in.
That's exactly what I mean by side conversations.
Yes,
you literally talking to someone else
about
at the
something
table
you guys
while
did or something. Right.
That's
always
weird to me.
Yeah. You disagree?
I mean, it's I just imagine Neelan policing,
Well,
I
I
turn
would
to
never
Mark
do
and
that.
say oh, did you see that episode of Billions? He's like, stop talking. Not everyone here has seen the show Billions, so what you're doing is weird, man.
The reason it does feel a little bit weird to me is because either you're having a discussion with some of the people at the table and other people are happily getting on with the game, which is mostly fine, but otherwise you're talking to everyone at the table and just sort of literally disrupting the game.
Right.
So I just feel like there's no real happy medium to that.
I've never disrupted a game before.
That's true.
What about trash talk? Do you have a flavor of table talk? Do you like to have table talk be aggressive? Do you like your own or others? What is your... I'll start out. I like having a spirited level of banter back and forth. I mean, I love being self-depreciating too. Like, I love making like fun of myself in terms of like the moves we've made, or like having some crazy story about my guy traveling around the board.
Right.
But I do like the biting. I like taking shots at, especially people that I know that I play with a lot. I think that really, really elevates the experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I'm just less comfortable doing it, but I have no problem with it. When I'm uncomfortable at a table and I feel like that's the energy of the table, I do love participating in it.
Yeah.
Especially like you said, like the little stories, almost like jokes that happen over the course of a game.
Yeah.
You just like play them out to completion, like as you're playing.
Exactly.
I love that.
I mean, I think my answer is probably self-evident, but this type of talk is the only way to compete with someone else in a game.
Right.
Because not only is there fun and funniness added as a result, but there's also the psychological component where you can psych them out and actually gain an advantage.
Yeah.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit, Callan, because there's this thing you do, which is...
Oh, here it comes.
Well, because it's interesting, right? Because there is this element which is half almost a strategic consideration. Callan is very good at talking his way into positions and not making it seem like that's what he's doing deliberately. So, like, for example, this is something I'll admit actually sometimes occasionally bugs me, which is where I'll make a move and Callan will instantly be like, really, that's the move? Like, you think that's the best thing you could be doing? And I'm just like, well, maybe I shouldn't. But meanwhile, Callan knows that that's what that's going to do to me. So I'm just like second guessing, well, maybe I should use something else. But that's exactly what Callan wants.
Next time, don't come into my territory.
I just feel like when I'm at a table and everybody is participating in it, in that kind of conversation and that like ribbing, I feel like the intimacy switch, which is a term I'm coining now, moves up a notch. Like, I feel like it's like
Viagra.
Sure.
Well, it is immediate.
Yeah.
Its
Right.
effects.
Right. And lasts 4 hours.
Right.
No,
Well, if it lasts longer than 4
then
hours,
call
you should
your
consult a doctor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, please, kids.
Dr.
Consult
Finn?
Doctor. Sure.
Yeah, a fan of our show.
Right.
Doctor.
Or Kinesia. I guess it depends on the flavor. Anyway, but I feel like I've been in games with you guys and other people like that we're close to, and I feel like when we're all sort of doing that, like taking shots and like ribbing each other and making fun of ourselves, I feel like the game elevates. I feel like there's like a palpable, like, okay, this is like a really fun session. And I feel like no matter what happens at the table, more or less, I mean, obviously if the game goes really south, that can maybe ruin it. But like when we're having those like jabs at each other or like at ourselves, something clicks in my head saying, this is a fun time. Like,
Yeah.
I'm having a fun time.
I mean, this is how we play Codenames, right?
Right.
Which is
Which is a
insane
game you
amounts.
wouldn't think that would be.
Yeah. Everyone wants to sit and think, but as soon as someone gives the clue, the other team immediately starts telling them all the possible options that it could be,
Right.
even though they make no sense.
Right.
They're like, did you know the Greek way to say this word is elephant?
Right.
And, then they're like,
So-
what? And you just keep saying things to distract them.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine in our group, but that would be very group dependent.
Yeah,
Sure.
you wouldn't do that with a random group
Oh,
of
I
people.
totally would.
Oh, yeah, I bet you would. But I mean, I'd imagine most people wouldn't.
So what do you do when you find yourselves, and maybe you don't change at all, Kellen, but like when you find yourselves in a table where like it's like mixed company, like in terms of people you're comfortable with and then maybe a new player comes in, somebody who's like new to the group. Would you maybe direct the ribbing only at the other players, or would you tone it down completely, or how would that go?
I mean, I think that's similar to how you play a conflict game, even with newer players, new people to the group, or people who get too salty. We've had a couple of members of the game group who I just won't attack in the games because I'm so tired of them whining.
Right.
You might accuse me of being a whiner, but mine is more strategic.
Right. Right.
And doesn't sound like a whine. So that's the difference.
I think I'm in the same boat as you. If I'm playing with somebody who I know is a conflict averse, then I just won't attack them. And Neelan, maybe you have what your strategy is when it comes to players like that.
It's probably a little bit of the same thing that you're implying, that you're more comfortable sort of ribbing or like sort of trashing people that you're more comfortable with.
Right.
And I might not do that so strongly with a new person until I feel like they're trying to like give a little bit of it back.
But let's separate new people from people who we know are conflict averse.
Oh, okay.
So people who you've played with before, who you know,
right,
are
so that I'm
going to take it.
comfortable with in other contexts.
Yes, but
I
know
know
that-
that
yeah.
specific of this. Yeah, that's
Do
interesting.
you try to treat them as you would anybody else, or
I feel like I try to at least sort of like bring them into
Okay.
the fold a little bit.
Right.
Like I'm going to sort of prod at you a little bit and come up to us. We're
Right.
having fun here.
Okay.
And yeah.
So
it's like the fun is the razor's edge, right?
Right.
Between crossing a line and everyone having a good time.
Yeah. Right.
You know the moments where you say something and then the air is like sucked out of the room and everybody just looks at you and they're like, did that really just happen? You want to be right underneath that.
Yes, right. Yeah. Callan has been above that quite a few times. He speaks from experience. Okay, so what about, again, not players who are conflict averse, but new players, like brand new to the game group? How do you deal with them in terms of talk? I'll just start us off. I try to like work the talk in slowly at that point. Like I'll start by being more self-depreciating, but then I will also take soft jabs at them. I'll try to like just, again, add that little like spiciness to the game. Because I think I feel most comfortable myself when I'm playing and being like comfortable talking that way.
So what kind of spicy comment does one make in like Concordia? Like, oh, haha, that wasn't very efficient, dude.
Stay away from my grapes. No, I don't know. I would say like, why do you have to be on this side of Italy or whatever border? Like, just, stay on your side.
Over there.
We're doing fine over here.
Go
like,
back to your country.
Yeah, go back and attack Kellen or Kellen's got some nice wood over there. That's bad to say.
Yep.
That's editing probably. But yeah.
Was it the intimacy switch?
Yeah, the intimacy
switch just flipped all the way up. Yeah.
But I think you can table talk any game. So I like to feel like I can be my normal self playing with even new players. I think sometimes you will maybe see them shrink away and then okay.
So we're in like Care Bear land right now, right? Emotions, feelings, how people react. But let's talk. Can we talk a little bit about the strategic part of this, which is like, oh, you shouldn't be in Italy. You should be attacking Neelan.
Right.
Is that table talk?
I think that's table talk. That's fine. I mean, there's more danger there of crossing a line to like the whole king making or like having an effect on a game. I think if it's done lightly or whatever, it's fine. But, when you're insisting on something or you're like...
What is a board game, Mark?
What is a board? Webster's defines a board game as
because I would define it as a peaceful recreation of a battle.
Okay. Codenames is a peaceful recreation of a battle?
Absolutely. A battle of wits.
Battle of wits, okay.
Where everything is allowed.
Okay.
Unless the rules say otherwise.
Okay. I would have our listeners go back to the Rising Sun episode
exactly.
and see
I love
where
how you just
Kellen's
shot your own argument down.
I think you should also look up the definition of a trade, good sir.
I think it's one of those things that it feels weirdly game dependent when it shouldn't necessarily be, because some games, I mean, obviously if you're playing a negotiation game, that is the game, right?
Yeah.
But if the argument is that every game should allow for a negotiation element to it, where you're sort of cajoling for your position or convincing people not to do a thing that's not necessarily to their advantage, I'm not sure that that's always necessarily encouraged.
Okay, here's a weird specific example.
Okay.
Help me, Mark.
Yes.
Adjudicate for us.
Okay.
Adjudicate, Mark.
I will judge.
For us. We were playing Everdell, as we did and talked about earlier. And you are trying to be the first person to get these contracts, right? There's 4 of them or a certain amount of them, and the first person to have that tableau gets to claim them. At one point, near the end of the game, I'm looking around and I look at Neelan's tableau and I realize that he's about to get one of them or he's fighting for it. And I'm nowhere near it. I'm not even in the running. And so as a sidebar him, I'm like, oh, you're going for that one, aren't you, bro? And he looked me dead in the eyes and he was like, no, what? No.
Again, that's not exactly what I was going for. But sorry,
you'll have
continue.
your turn.
You'll have
your turn.
And so I was I couldn't decide if he was just lying to me or my question was sort of not really in the spirit of the game. I wasn't even trying to discern some strategic advantage because like I said, I was nowhere near it.
Were you doing it to bring the attention to the table that he was on this track? Or were you just making...
I mean, I feel like had he admitted it, I probably would have tried to figure out who else could take it from him.
Okay.
But so what is the...
Well, let's have the defense speak.
Well, yeah. I don't have a whole lot to say, but what was interesting is that my intention for there was entirely different from how you took it. When I said no, it was like at a very no, yes, I'm obviously doing this. I'm like 1 card away from doing it. At the same time, I didn't think anyone at the table was actually close to doing it because I'm obviously watching other players. But Dan, who was on the opposite corner, was fairly close to it. So it did become this interesting moment of like, oh, you've signaled to Dan that I'm actually pretty close to doing this.
Was that okay?
Well, Kellen, could you describe what you heard, how you heard Neelan's no? Because he said his no was like, what?
No.
Okay, that's a very clear... So how did you hear his no?
I mean, everything Neelan says is awkward, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Filtered
through this accent.
It's like, what? No?
Okay. I think in that case, I would be fine with what you said because it was with Neelan and yourself and Dan. I think those are all players who are going to do their own thing. Like, I don't think that they're going to be easily swayed. I think if it was like a new player at the table where you might have been able to like influence their actions more, that might have been a little less. But I think that's fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
So there's like a scenario here where Dan goes on to win that game as a result of you saying that, which is infuriating to me. I mean, that didn't happen in this case, but it's interesting, right?
But I guess you have to overcome everyone. And so you're saying that because I was in second in that game, I was close-ish.
I think Dan was second.
Okay. Interesting. I know Everdell is not intended to be a negotiation
and that's
game.
the funniest thing, that this is the example we're using.
And I would turn any game into a negotiation game if I could. But I suppose I don't understand what's wrong about helping point out to someone, hey, you should get that card because, that's going to hurt the person who's winning. You won by a lot of points.
I think it's the degree. I think with like people that we play with all the time, I think the swath you have of being able to like say that kind of stuff is larger. But if it had been a new player and you would have said you really need to take that card to prevent Nealon from taking it, and you had pushed it, then that would have been like a little bit.
See, that's what you do with husbands and wives, where you convince one of them to scumbag the other one.
Okay. Oh,
I'm very good at that.
At a game, to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay, because I wasn't sure what you were talking about.
No,
I was like, are we this is a life lesson?
You don't want your husband, you don't want your wife to win.
Right.
Like, you
right.
need to take that card.
Right.
But secretly, it just helps me.
Right. That's right. Gotcha.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kim and Kurt. I guess the nuances of this are weird to me, right? Because Nealon also got salty the same game night during our game of Newsfjord, where a newer player was getting coached by another player, and a newer player who was new to strategy games and completely new to Newsfjord. And Nealon at the end is a little like, we shouldn't be helping the newbies. And I'm kind of going,
this
what?
is actually
Nealon,
true.
you are a monster.
None of this is true.
Why don't you talk? Yes.
No, like,
Nealon doesn't want anybody to talk, doesn't want anybody to help the new players. What is this?
I said as a general rule, I'm not a huge fan of like dictating a strategy to someone, right? Because
that is not what you said. You said helping someone do good moves in the game.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, though.
So
like
pointing out good moves to a new player.
It wasn't
you don't
specific
like.
to a new player. This specific example happened to be that. Like, as a general rule, yeah. Like, if you have multiple people of different skill levels, then sure, you would help them through some of like the early strategic considerations, right? That didn't feel like what this was. This was literally like, you should do this and then this.
It felt like somebody playing two hands, basically.
It felt. I mean, it wasn't happening consistently throughout the game, but it felt a little bit like, okay, that's a lot you're telling that person.
Got it. I see.
I think we're going to have to implement a no talking rule.
I guess
no,
so.
but it's not even that. Because to me, it just felt a little bit patronizing, to be perfectly honest. But
so yeah, I guess to summarize, just yell at the people that you're playing games with and take shots at them. Be merciless. Listen to the way they say no to make sure that they're saying it correctly.
Yep.
Or if you're a fan of the orange take, never speak again.
Right.
Oh my God, that's not even what I'm saying. I was going to say the opposite, which is, you might be in a group or in a group of people that generally doesn't do a lot of this table talk, and to some extent you have to force it a little bit to get your group to that point where it's comfortable. And honestly, I would recommend it.
I actually am 100% behind you. Like, if you play with quiet groups or your group is quiet or you're playing with new players, I just think that dip your toes into a little bit of
jabs.
chat. A couple of jabs, like be self-depreciating. I just think it like elevates every single game I've ever played.
Right.
The stakes are raised just a little bit. You're not making it life or death, but just a little bit with a little bit of like jokingness and a little bit of like taking shots at yourself and others. I just think it always makes the game more fun, and it makes the game more intimate.
Yeah, and more memorable, and just a more interesting, richer experience.
Yeah.
I mean, of the game itself.
Exactly.
Even.
Right.
Like, not even like the social aspect.
Right.
It makes your game more interesting.
Absolutely.
But if you come in hot to a new group, you're not going to get invited back. And I know that from personal experience.
Oh, really? Oh, I would love to hear the story
I get voted out all the time, Mark.
of groups.
Well, who can say?
But yeah, to summarize, crank that intimacy knob.
Switch?
Switch.
Not a knob.
Yeah,
I don't think you crank switches, do you?
You crank a switch. Can you crank a
flip
switch?
a switch?
I think you flip it hard.
No. I want the knob to be raised.
Yep.
Oh, now we're talking about knobs?
All right. That is going to definitely do it for our show. As we mentioned earlier, you can find us at all forms of social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We need to wrap this show up quick.
It's getting hot in here.
It's getting, yes, absolutely. You can find us at boardgamebarrage.com. You can find our Discord, which you should definitely join because if you want more of what you've heard here, you can find it at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Our guild is also a place where we have a lot of in-depth discussions. It's a really great place to talk with us as well. That's boardgamebarrage.com/guild. As always, a big thank you to Heart Society for letting us use their song What's on Your Mind, Kid, which opens and closes our show. You can find them at heartsocietymusic.com. Until next week, see you guys later.
Goodbye.
Good night. It's kind of like editing by Mark, but produced by Cal and Alan.
And also Neelan is here.
Okay, so we're live?
Well, it's getting cut.
I don't know. We've been talking about erections for 45 minutes, Mark.
Oh my God, I want to use that as a tag so badly. Oh God. Okay.
Okay, so we're at an hour.
I feel like we have to wrap, yeah.